They say the greatest joy in a parent's life is the day your child no longer needs you. That's a lie. The greatest joy is the day they still need you, but this time, for something happy. My name is Peter. I'm 72 years old. I'm a retired widower, and for the last 3 years, I've been living alone in a house that was suddenly too big, too quiet, and too full of memories. This story is about how I gave my son everything I had, and how he tried to hide me behind a tree. It all started with a phone call. I remember it like it was yesterday. My son, Andrew, called me. His voice was shaking, not with sadness, but with pure, uncontainable excitement. Dad, we found it. We found the house. Andrew and his wife, Sarah, had been looking for months. I could hear Sarah laughing in the background. For the first time in a long time, they sounded like the happy kids I remembered. He sent me the pictures, and it was a beautiful house. A real dream house. 4 bedrooms, a big oak tree in the front yard, a backyard for future grandkids. It was everything they ever wanted. Then Andrew's voice dropped. There's just one problem, Dad. The bank, they said our credit isn't good enough. Sarah's freelance work, my student loans, they won't approve us a loan. I didn't hesitate, not for a second. You see, after my wife Mary died of cancer 2 years prior, the house became a museum of grief. Every chair she sat in, every cup she drank from. I was drowning in loneliness and in a pension fund that I had no use for. I had spent 40 years working overtime, fixing machines at the plant, saving every penny for retirement with Mary. A retirement that would now never happen. So when my son needed me, I finally had a purpose again. I told him, let's go to the bank tomorrow. The bank manager looked at our application and gave us the solution. Because Andrew's credit was insufficient, I couldn't just be a guarantor. I had to be a co-borrower. That was the legal term. Co-borrower. It meant I would put my entire pension, my entire life savings down as the down payment. It meant my name would be on the loan, and more importantly, it meant my name would be on the deed. Legally, I would be half owner of the property. Andrew cried when I signed the papers. He hugged me and said, Dad, we're going to make so many memories here, and it's all because of you. I believed him. Moving day came. I was 69, but I felt 30 again. I spent the entire weekend doing heavy physical labor, carrying couches upstairs, assembling beds, unpacking boxes until my back screamed in pain. I didn't care. I watched them turn that empty house into a home. That's when things started to change. Slowly at first. So slowly you could almost pretend you didn't notice. The phone calls got shorter. Hey, Dad, can't talk, busy. The visits became less frequent. When I did visit, I felt it, a cold wall. Sarah was the architect of that wall. She was always polite. Perfectly, rigidly polite. The kind of polite that is colder than outright rudeness. Oh, Peter, you didn't have to bring anything. Peter, Andrew is resting right now. She maintained a boundary around that house, around my son, that I was not allowed to cross. She saw me not as family, but as a debt. A living, breathing reminder that this dream house wasn't really theirs, that they had needed help. And the worst part, Andrew saw it too. I would be in the middle of telling him a story about his mother, and Sarah would interrupt. Andrew, honey, did you take out the trash? And just like that, I was cut off. And Andrew, my son, would just retreat. He would look down, mumble, yeah, just a second, and he would choose the path of least resistance. He always chose passivity over loyalty. He never defended me. He never said, Sarah, let my dad finish. I told myself he was just trying to keep the peace in his marriage. That's what fathers do. We make excuses for our sons. 3 years passed like that. 3 years of being a half owner on paper, but a stranger in reality. Then, out of nowhere came the invitation. It was a Tuesday evening. Andrew called. He sounded nervous, but cheerful. Dad, we're finally having a housewarming party. It's been 3 years, we know, but we finally have the house exactly how we want it. We want you to be there. Saturday. Please come. A housewarming party. 3 years after moving in. It was strange, but I didn't care. My son was inviting me into his home. I spent the next 3 days preparing to impress him. How pathetic is that? A father trying to impress his own son. I bought a new shirt, a crisp blue button-down. I went to the barber and got a proper haircut for the first time in months. I polished my old shoes until I could see my own tired face in them. I also had a gift. I didn't want to come empty-handed. I went to an old carpenter friend and commissioned a handcrafted wooden sign. Solid oak, hand-carved, hand-painted. It read, "The Johnson family, established with love." I wanted them to know I still saw them as a family. My family. Andrew had one special request. "Can you come early, Dad? Like at 3 p.m.? The party starts at 5, but we want to do some family photos before everyone arrives." Family photos. He still considered me family for the photos. My heart swelled. I arrived at 2:55 p.m. sharp. The house looked magnificent. More magnificent than I remembered. New landscaping, a fresh coat of paint. There were expensive cars parked outside already. I walked up to the front door, gift in hand, wearing my new shirt, my heart beating like a drum. I rang the bell. Sarah opened the door. She didn't smile. She looked me up and down, her eyes landing on the wrapped wooden sign in my hands. Her voice was a cold whisper, so the neighbors wouldn't hear. "What are you doing here? You're early. And you're at the front door." Before I could answer, she stepped outside and pulled the door almost closed behind her. "Look, Peter, the guests in the front are important people, my parents' friends, investors. You can't come in through here like this. Go around. Go through the backyard. The side gate is open." And just like that, she refused to even take my gift. She left it hanging in my hands. I was barred at the front door of a house that I had paid for, a house that legally belonged to me. I stood there for a second, humiliated, confused. Then I did what I've always done. I obeyed to keep the peace. I walked away from the front door, carrying my gift, like a delivery man who had come to the wrong entrance. I walked around to the back. The side gate creaked. The backyard was transformed. There was a catering table, fairy lights, a professional photographer setting up his tripod, and about 30 people I had never seen before. All polished, all wealthy, all laughing with champagne glasses in their hands, and I felt like a stranger who had wandered into the wrong party. I saw her immediately. Margaret, Sarah's mother. She is a wealthy, polished woman who wears money like perfume. She was standing on the patio directing the caterers, acting like she was the queen of this castle, acting like she was the owner of the house. Andrew saw me. Our eyes met across the yard. For a second, I saw panic flash across his face. Not happiness, panic. He rushed over, but he didn't hug me. "Dad, you made it," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "Listen, can you just wait here for a sec? We're about to start photos." He looked at the gift in my hands, this beautiful handcrafted sign I had spent a week's pension on, and he just put it aside on a wet garden table without even opening it, as if it was trash. Before I could say a word, the photographer, a loud man with a headset, clapped his hands. "All right, everyone, immediate family only. Immediate family to the front. Johnson's Margaret, let's go. Big family portrait time." My heart lifted. Immediate family. That was me. I was his father. I was the reason this house existed. I started to step forward, and that's when Sarah's hand shot out. She didn't say excuse me. She didn't smile. She physically grabbed my arm, her nails digging in slightly, and she guided me. Not forward, backward. She steered me away from the smiling group, away from the camera, away from my son. She steered me behind the old oak tree, that beautiful massive oak tree in the front of the photo's frame. "Peter, you stand here, okay? The light is better if you're back here. We want to keep the shot clean." Clean. She hid me, behind a tree trunk. So I would not be in the family photo, in the photo of the family whose home I had bought. I stood there, behind that tree. I am a 72-year-old man, and I stood behind a tree like a shamed child while my son, my daughter-in-law, her mother, and all their wealthy friends posed and laughed and shouted cheese for the camera. 20 minutes. I stood there for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of pure, cold humiliation. I could hear the shutter clicking. I could hear Margaret laughing. "Oh, we are such a beautiful family." My new shirt was soaked in sweat. My polished shoes were covered in dirt. After the photos, no one came to get me. They just left me there. They moved on to cocktails. I finally stepped out from behind the tree on my own. My legs were stiff. That's when I heard Margaret's voice, loud and proud, talking to a group of women near the garden. "Oh yes, we helped them so much with this house," she was boasting. "Managing the mortgage is so difficult these days, but we made it happen for Sarah and Andrew." "We," she said, "we." Not a single word about the old man who had given his entire life savings. I felt dizzy. I needed to sit down. I walked away from the crowd, near the garage where the music was quieter. I sat on an old overturned bucket, my head in my hands. And then I heard them, Sarah, Margaret, and Andrew. They had walked to the side of the garage to talk privately. They didn't know I was there, just around the corner. Sarah's voice was sharp, annoyed. I told you he would come early and make everyone uncomfortable. He looks so desperate in that new shirt, like he's trying too hard. He's so embarrassing. He acts like he owns the place because he helped a little. A little. My entire life's work was a little. Then Margaret chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. You need to fix this, Andrew. You need to refinance. Get his name off the deed. Now that your income is higher, you can qualify on your own. Remove him. It's unhealthy, Sarah feeling like she lives in her father-in-law's house. He needs to understand his place. I held my breath, waiting for one voice. My son's voice. Would he defend me? Would he say, he is my father, he gave us everything? Andrew sighed. A long, tired, cowardly sigh. I know. I've been thinking about it. It's just the paperwork, and his name on the title complicates things. I'll talk to the bank next week. I'll get his name removed. I promise. Refinance. Remove his name. In that moment, something inside me broke, but something else, something that had been asleep for 3 years, woke up. My desire for their approval, it vanished in an instant. All the loneliness, all the longing to be loved by them, it was burned away and replaced by something cold, something hard, something clear. Fury, but not a hot, screaming fury, a cold, calculating fury. I stood up. I brushed the dirt off my new shirt. I was done waiting behind the tree. At that exact moment, fate intervened. One of the guests, a man named Mark, was standing near the bar. I recognized him from the moving day. He was a legal notary, a friend of Sarah's father. He had been watching the whole thing. He had seen Sarah pull me behind the tree. He had heard Margaret's lie about the mortgage. He was talking to 2 other couples, and his voice carried. Shame Peter has to stand in the back, isn't it, considering he owns half this damn house. The conversation around him stopped. What did you say? One of the guests asked. Mark, oblivious to the bomb he was about to drop, chuckled. Yeah, it's public record. Peter is co-borrower. He put the down payment down. Legally, he's a 50% owner. He could sell the whole thing if he wanted to. I saw Sarah from across the yard. She had heard him. Her face went white, pure white. Her champagne glass trembled in her hand. She turned and locked eyes with me. And for the first time that day, she wasn't looking at me with cold detachment. She was looking at me with fear. I smiled, a calm, terrible smile, and I started walking towards the center of the party. The music stopped, or maybe it just felt that way to me. 30 pairs of eyes were on me as I walked from the garage to the middle of that perfect manicured lawn. My shoes were dirty. My shirt was untucked. I had just spent 20 minutes hidden behind a tree like a piece of garbage they forgot to take out. Sarah rushed towards me, her face still pale, her smile a frantic, desperate mask. Peter, honey, are you okay? Do you need some water? Honey. She had never called me honey before in her life. I looked past her, directly at the crowd, at Margaret, whose polished mask was cracking, at Andrew, who looked like he was about to be sick, and I spoke. My voice was clear. It was loud. It was the voice I used to use when Andrew was a little boy and he needed to hear his father. Thank you, Sarah, I said, but I don't need water. I turned to the guests. My name is Peter Johnson. For those of you who don't know me, I am Andrew's father, and I apologize for hiding behind the oak tree. My daughter-in-law thought the family photo would be cleaner without me. A gasp went through the crowd. Mark here was kind enough to share some legal facts, I continued, nodding at the notary, who now realized what he had done and looked down at his drink. He's right, I am the co-borrower of this house. When my son and his wife couldn't get a loan because of poor credit, I gave them my entire pension, my entire life savings, 40 years of work. I put it down on this house. My name is on the deed. I own 50% of this home that you are all standing in right now. You could hear a pin drop on that lawn. I was told to come in through the back door today. I was told my gift wasn't needed, and I was physically hidden behind a tree so I wouldn't embarrass this beautiful family. I looked at Andrew, my son. My eyes were full of tears, but my voice didn't shake. Andrew, I came here today hoping to be in a family photo, but it seems your wife and her mother have other plans. They plan to refinance the house and remove my name, to erase me. Andrew's mouth opened, but no words came out. I took a step closer to him, the private confrontation in front of everyone, in the living room of my own house. So here's what is going to happen, I said, quietly enough that only the first circle of guests could hear, but with absolute finality. You have two choices. Choice one, you buy out my half, at current market value. Not what I paid 3 years ago, what it's worth today. You have 30 days. Choice two, if you cannot afford to buy me out, I will exercise my right as half owner and put this house on the market, and we will split the profits, exactly in half. Margaret screamed from behind Sarah. You can't do that, you ungrateful old man, after everything we've done. I didn't even look at her. I looked at my son one last time. I picked up my handcrafted wooden sign from the wet garden table where Andrew had discarded it. I held it in my hands. I turned and walked out. I stormed out through the front door this time. The same front door they had barred me from. I opened it wide and left it open. I left the party in stunned silence. The next morning, I did what any sensible man would do. I called my lawyer. I sat in his office and he confirmed everything Mark had said. Peter, you are absolutely within your rights. As a co-borrower on the title, you can file a partition action. You can force the sale, they cannot stop you. With that confirmation, I went home and I did it. I froze the joint account we used to pay the house payments, the one I was still contributing to, and I called a realtor friend and I listed the property. Andrew left a handwritten letter in my mailbox 2 days later, 4 pages stained with tears, begging for forgiveness, saying Sarah didn't mean it, saying he was under pressure. I didn't reply. Then the calls started. Andrew called me crying at midnight. Dad, please. Sarah's parents are furious. They said we humiliated them in front of all their friends. Sarah says she's going to leave me if you sell the house. Dad, please don't do this. He was reaping what he had sown for 3 years. Within 2 weeks, the house was sold. A young, lovely family with 2 small kids bought it at full asking price. They loved the big oak tree in the front. Before handing over the keys, I did a final empty walkthrough. The house was cleared out. The walls were bare. And there, on the front porch, sitting on the steps with his head in his hands, was Andrew. He looked 10 years older. He looked up at me. Sarah left me, he said, his voice hollow. She said I failed to protect her from you, that I was a weak man who let his father control us. She went back to her parents. He looked at the empty house. I lost everything, Dad. I sat down next to him on the porch. 2 men who had lost everything. For a long time, we said nothing. Then 6 months passed. No calls, no letters, just silence. One rainy afternoon, 6 months later, there was a knock on my door. My small, quiet, lonely house. I opened it, and there was Andrew. No expensive car, no fancy clothes, just my son in a wet t-shirt holding nothing. He had no money left after the split and the divorce. No status, no wife. He looked at me and asked the one question that had been haunting him. Dad, that day behind the tree, why didn't you scream? Why didn't you come out? Why did you just stand there for 20 minutes and take it? I looked at my son, my boy, who was finally looking at me not as a bank account, but as his father. And I gently explained the truth that had taken me 72 years to learn. I wasn't waiting for Sarah to come get me, Andrew. I wasn't waiting for the photographer to call me. I was waiting for my own son to speak up for me. I stood behind that tree for 20 minutes waiting for you to say, "Hey, where's my dad?" And you never did. Andrew broke down. He fell to his knees on my porch and sobbed like he did when he was 5 years old and scraped his knee. And I knelt down and I hugged him. I didn't forgive him instantly. That's not how real life works. Forgiveness is not a switch. It's a long, slow journey. But that day, on that rainy porch, father and son began the long journey toward rebuilding their relationship. Not as owner and borrower, but as father and son again. Because some houses are built with money. But a home is built with respect. And if there's no respect, then it's just four walls that need to be sold.